there's a lot of people here. I feel like there's a lot of positive energy. I'm so honored to be with you, Holly, today. I'm so honored to be with all of you here on stage and in this room. I am a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm the host of a co-host of the Main Enough podcast, sponsored by P&G. I'm making a documentary about disability rights with the help of Microsoft. I sit on the board of Girl Up, which, Holly, thank you for helping fund organizations like Girl Up. So I'm a direct beneficiary of people like you caring about causes and the people that are trying to amplify them. So thank you. And I'm really excited to jump in. We have 14 minutes, now 13. So I want to start off by really having a conversation around the creator economy and how the creator economy is sort of shifting CSR. I have this kind of theory that storytellers are going to be kind of the new athletes, where they are sponsored in the way that an athlete is sponsored, right? An athlete is sponsored by New Balance or Nike with the shoes that they're wearing to, play with the baseball bat that they're, or whatever the sport that they're doing. And I think storytellers are sort of becoming that way, where companies are really sort of supporting their work in that same kind of respect. I'm wondering how you are viewing the creator economy, which is changing so fast and kind of new. Has it changed the way that you are approaching CSR?
So a bit, yes. We unfortunately haven't made our TikTok debut yet, but in the absence of that,
yeah, we'll come up with ideas.
We have spent some time trying to identify third-party validators who can be or serve as a testimony to the work that we do and the impact that we can have. There's a recognition that if we're engaged in a particular area of work and we talk about the impact of it, it only carries a certain amount of weight. But if we can find someone who has, rolled up their sleeves and being a part of that journey in a really intimate, authentic way, we can partner with them and help elevate their story, which in turn kind of helps us tell our story and get our word out.
So it's an ability to actually be more authentic by relying on people who've already earned the trust of their communities, right, and are authorities within the space, and sort of tapping into those communities. So that's cool. And I think, look, there's like a general trend, I think, in the last few years, definitely got amplified in 2020, where, before I think companies could kind of get away with not speaking out on certain topics, and now silence is speech, right? If you don't speak out about a certain issue or cause, you are, you might get called out, in a way that's almost more dramatic or more severe than if you do and you say the wrong thing. So I'm curious how you are approaching that, right? In this kind of environment where people aren't just expecting, companies to sort of follow public opinion, but to actually shift and help shape public opinion.
Sure. It's been quite an interesting couple of years. And the approach that we've taken is to really try to remain true to our authentic identity. So there are times when you can overstep by with good intentions, right? By wanting to sort of draw a line in the sand and state where you sit on a particular issue as a company. But what we found is that we want to tether ourselves to the position of our employees. Yeah. So when we are talking about a particular issue, there's either a pattern of behavior that is indicative of investments that we've made over a number of years, and or we're representing the voice of our employees on a particular issue. So if there is, some sort of blowback or reaction to a comment, that we have this safety in the fact that we're being true to our authentic selves and representing our team.
Yeah, but what do you do? Because, look, public opinion and even sort of things are changing, faster than the society is actually able to implement those changes. And again, I think it's great to be idealistic. I'm that's my drug. I love, sort of thinking about what an ideal world looks like and being really optimistic about the future. But yeah, I'm thinking of companies like the Wing, for example, right, that had a very utopic sort of view of what feminism and what a feminist company could look like, but then dealing with, existing in a society where that is not, the reality. How do you again, like deal with that internally. I don't know, of employees maybe feeling that discrepancy, or again, people, being critical of you, right? So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? If you don't say anything because you're not necessarily, doing that well in that regard, you'll get criticized. But then if you say something and, right? Like how do you sort of manage that?
Well, I think in understanding where your employees sit,
Right.
that can guide your reaction. So for us, there were some core values that we had as a company, and we wanted to do these periodic pulses with employees to understand what their perspective was. And then if there was a need for education on a particular issue, like if there was just a lack of information or knowledge, we use that as an opportunity for employee development. So really, again, using the information and data that's there, revealing it, and then allowing that to guide the strategy was a way that we felt like we could bring folks to a particular issue without us sort of telling them or dictating to them what our position should be, and you need to either get on board or get out.
Right.
So it's an iterative process.
And is there an example of that happening where you got pushback from an employee or learned something in these kinds of conversations?
Well, not necessarily pushback from employees.
Right.
We were talking backstage about, the recent Roe v. Wade decision, and how internally there was a lot of, differing opinions on where the employees might lie. And so ultimately, we had a conversation about accessibility to health, and without necessarily, coming out with a formal statement in one way or another, for us, we just felt like it was important to provide access to health. So I think, again, understanding where your employees sit and then staking out a position that's authentic to your core business is important.
Yeah, Roe v. Wade, and it's almost exactly a year ago, and I, remember that I wrote about it, and I cover, a lot of feminist issues, and obviously abortion is a really big one. And I think that what we were even seeing is that a lot of managers or executives, right, were almost misunderstanding even the position of their own employees, right? So this idea that people identify as pro-life, in certain instances, it might mean I won't get an abortion, but it doesn't mean that I want to stop someone else from getting one. And what we found in some of the data that was coming out at the time was that executives and managers were actually not really on the pulse of their employees, and I feel like that's again, I don't sort of blame them, because I think even at a societal level, we have that same kind of issue with defining positions and being more granular and being more complex in the way that we sort of talk about these issues. So I'm wondering, are those more difficult or controversial so-called topics and actually like a good opportunity to build trust and build more, not intimacy, but I guess, with your employees and like sort of connect with them?
Yes, I think so. I think in these times, Edelman actually releases every year the Trust Barometer, and it evaluates the general public's trust in different sectors.
Right.
And the leading sector over the last couple of years has been the private sector, over governments, nonprofits, religious institutions, which is fascinating. But what that does is it creates an opportunity for companies, brands that want to be progressive to kind of step into that void and really decide, again, authentically what their values are, and then lead with those. And that can inspire employees. I know in our case, the leadership that we've shown around impact and community has had a dramatic and direct effect on the type of talent we're able to recruit and retain at the company. We've had executives down to entry-level interviewees say that they were drawn because they knew how we showed up in the community, and that really spoke to them personally. So showing up as your authentic self and not being ashamed to state who you are publicly can have a number of benefits from a culture perspective.
Yeah, and admitting mistakes when they do happen, right? I think that's often the part, as a person who's been an employee, it's like, you obviously know that things won't always be perfect, but I think or again, even in relationships and marriage, and right, having someone just acknowledge like where they, may have failed, it doesn't make everything go away, but it certainly sort of helps. So, okay, I wanted to also talk about the environment that we're in, the political sort of response to companies being much more invested in certain, causes. There's a latest Pew poll that showed that 71% of Americans view large companies negatively. The right tends to see them negatively because of, they're like your, doing what should be happening at the ballot box in your corporations, and on the left it can be a frustration with Citizens United or lax antitrust laws. So there's sort of, again, an environment of frustration that's for many different reasons. With the corporate world and even in Florida, right, certain laws being passed in order to try and curb those efforts. And so does that change the way that do you just kind of do business as usual and you're like, we're just going to keep doing our thing? Or do you sort of take that into consideration in the way that you're approaching CSR?
Yeah, I think we have maintained business as usual. For us, the way that we invest in the community has always been driven by this ethos of wanting to support historically marginalized communities, whatever those look like and wherever they are. And external factors and variables aren't going to change that. So we remain committed to supporting those communities through dollars to encourage entrepreneurship, to support our future diverse STEAM leaders. The fundamentals behind those motivations don't change because of a particular perspective that's, a snapshot in time.
Yeah, great. I mean, as a layperson, and as a consumer, basically, right? Like, I really have appreciated, when companies have taken a stance. I think coming back to Roe v. Wade, a year ago, it was really meaningful to see companies again sort of take a stance and shift the conversation, because politicians are going to make laws, but politicians are listening to you and care about what you think too. Sometimes even more than they do about voters, unfortunately. So I think the opportunity is huge. So it's great to know that people are just continuing the way that they're doing things, and in a way you're sort of showing that it's working, and you sort of, instead of sort of jumping in the ring and arguing about why what you're doing is good, just doing good work speaks for itself. Okay, so before we go, I wanted to ask you a final question. It's my favorite question because I think it will end on a positive note. What is, and everyone can think about it actually, it's a fun one to just kind of do to relax. What is the last thing that gave you hope?
Oh boy, the last thing that gave me hope. Honestly, it was earlier today. There was a woman speaking on stage about this incredible journey that she went through that was traumatic in a lot of ways, and how she was able to persevere and overcome. And it reminded me of some situations in my own personal life where there are these moments where you feel like what's happening to you is like a signal of like the end. And ultimately, it ends up being like the beginning of another beautiful chapter. And if you can be patient and wait for that evolution to occur, it often will, hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, hopefully this is the end of our panel, but the beginning of something new and exciting for everybody here. Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you for all of you. Have a great rest of your conference summit. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.